sharing some memories of Tom, and everybody can kind of chime in when they would like to. So, it's supposed to be a celebration today. So, things that I remember about Tom is how important family was to him and his generosity. One of my first memories was he was playing the guitar when he was in high school, and when he could afford a better guitar, he gave me his guitar so I could learn. And when he was in the Navy, he had a 1964 Pontiac Le Mans that he sold to me after I graduated from high school for $150. So about what I could afford, you know.
And when I met her, she was driving it.
And I was.
There was 9 different colors. Not a good thing to have somebody like that in your life when you're driving.
And then he always sent a birthday card. He never missed a birthday. And in his travels in the Navy, that he always brought back a souvenir spoon for my mom for her spoon collection. So those are just a few memories that I have, and anybody can share and.
I have some from the California cousins.
Okay.
That Janelle and Rainey sent me. The only cousin who would play in the snow with us. Took us on a tour of his submarine in Alameda, California. Introduced us to $2 Chuck from Trader Joe's. Assisted in long distance caring from Mom after Dad passed. Went to Janelle's wedding. We exchanged letters all the time when he was in Vietnam. Introduced us to several new authors, a reading fool. Always came to the desert when we were visiting Mom and Dad. Books on tape. All around great guy, loved to drive anywhere. Always returned our phone calls. Helped with Dad's funeral.
Little guilt?
Sent birthday cards. Growing his lemon and orange trees. Once a farmer, always a farmer. Rest in peace, love, Janelle and Rainey.
Oh, nice.
I have some things.
Okay.
Let's see, I had to write mine down here. Let me see. Many years ago, the California cousins and I started going to Juanita's for her birthday and garage sale in March. This started my Tom connection. He'd always come to the desert and took a lot of guts to hang out with 4 women and only 1 other man, but he's a pro. Jim and I started spending winters in California. We saw Tom a couple of times a month. He introduced us to lots of new authors that he thought I should read. He had a great lending library for reading California politics, how his online classes worked, and eating at the best places. Tom's best place to eat was in our house because you got to take home the leftovers. There are so many good memories and stories of Tom. He had such a great sense of humor and fun to be around. So you keep the good memories and throw the bad ones out the window.
I have a couple things. Don't let this frighten you. It's just a couple of words because I figured it kind of triggered some memories. I knew Tom in his later years, last 18, 19 years. And basically it was through golf. Tom was a maniac about golf. He had to play golf all the time. And my wife Karen was right next to him all the time. We'd be playing around the golf. By the 16th, 17th hole, the 2 of them are working on where we're going to play next week. And if it was a Monday or a Tuesday, where we're going to play on Friday. And literally we played at minimum once a week, every week, sometimes twice. And then we had Tom over my place for dinner. He loved those dinners, didn't he? Never made a bad meal in my life when Tom was there.
That's true.
And because traffic in California, San Diego was unbelievable. So he stayed for dinner, and after dinner we sit and chat. I mean, we talk about everything, anything, nothing, just life in general. not too much his military. My military, yes, because his military was bad, mine was a joke. So I regaled him with a lot of my stories that he did find funny, but he didn't appreciate them, I don't think. And anyway, when, like for dinner, it's amazing. My sister-in-law Paulette and Tom were the two people that I knew that would rather have a pork chop than a steak. Unbelievable. So I used to get huge pork chops and make it for both of them. They loved it. Of course, my sister-in-law didn't like cooking, so it was, she was with Tom. My meals were always. Unfortunately, when Tom would stay, he'd have a good drink of scotch before he'd leave. I used to buy 12-year-old scotch for him. And then I upgraded him to 16-year-old scotch. And then he says, oh, I quit drinking. What the hell would I buy the 16-year-old scotch for? He says, oh, John will drink it when he comes out. Yeah, so when you come out, you go to Palm Springs, call, I'll bring that jug with me. Tom did anger me because he wouldn't fly. Just, let's go with it, Tom, let's just go we'll take it. Yeah. Oh no, I'll drive, I'll meet you there. Well, you drive cross country, we're gonna play golf in Florida or something. Oh, I'll drive. Used to drive me crazy. One time we did get him to go to Germany with us on a riverboat cruise. And I'm really happy he did that because it was shortly after that he started having all of his problems. And all I can say is, well, I thank him for one thing. He was at my house on Memorial Day, and he encouraged my wife, along with my brother-in-law, to call 911. When I sat on the couch and my head went down, and I was kind of unaware of what was going on around me. But that worked out good because I'm standing here and I'm fine. But thank God he was there to encourage my wife because I'm not sure she was. One way or
She would have noticed.
Hey, put a card in his pocket so the insurance will double. Yeah, she's a beauty. But I would like to say that Tom was one of the kindest, gentlest people that I've met. A true gentleman, and I don't say this lightly because I only knew about 4 people in my life like this. It's just a truly good human being. God rest his soul.
So Lenny talked a little bit about Tom in more recent years. I want to tell a story about Tom years ago. So in 1966, Tom graduated from St. Thomas Academy, previously known as St. Thomas Military Academy, but they changed the name in 66. At that time, probably everybody in this room except Elizabeth will remember that our good friend Uncle Sam had a 2-year employment opportunity, I'll call it.
Not the draft, yeah.
Tom chose a different path and joined the Navy instead, which about a week before his friends and neighbors selected him for this other job that he didn't take. Also in 1966, I was a freshman in high school at a boarding school in Carthage, Missouri, in the southwestern part of the state. At Christmas, they would charter a Greyhound bus to take kids back to Minneapolis. They actually had a lot of students from the upper Midwest, Minneapolis, surrounding area. So the morning we were supposed to get on the bus, Tom shows up. Of course, I didn't know. Unannounced, unplanned, total surprise to me. While everybody else was getting on the bus, Tom and I had the campus pretty much to ourselves for the rest of the morning. We played one-on-one basketball, which was a big thing for me when I was in high school. So playing with Tom was an incredibly fun thing for me to do. And then we drove back together from Carthage to Snook Homestead, as it was called later in years, outside of Delano, Minnesota. We had Christmas with our family. So when I think back on that time, I think it's an early example of what some other people have said about Tom and how he was. He was incredibly thoughtful and caring and generous, and I miss him.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I'm the youngest of the 6 Snook siblings, and there's 9 years difference between Tom and I. And so when he left to go to St. Thomas Academy, he had to live on campus because it was too far away. So he was a boarding student at this St. Thomas Academy, and so when he left, I was only 7 years old. And so what I remember is, you know, him coming home for a weekend here or a holiday there, and that kind of is the way it was for the rest of our lives together. You know, I never really remembered ever living with him, except for maybe when I was in college. He stayed at my folks' house for a while. But he was always, you know, always made you feel important, and he would say, "Hey sis, what's going on?" And I think he's the only one that called Patty and I sis.
Yep.
And so he left and went to the military academy because he wanted to get a good education, and our local public school was not that. And then he wanted to go to one of the academies, and the military academies, and he did get an appointment to that, but he couldn't pass the physical because his eyesight was too poor. So he couldn't go to Annapolis or West Point or any of those things. And so, like Jim said, he enlisted in the Navy, and that was when the draft was prevalent, and he did go to Vietnam. And so he went to Vietnam, and pretty much everybody our age knows that was very hard. And not only did he go, but he made the choice to go a second time so that his brothers wouldn't have to go. Because at that time, they didn't send two guys from the same family. And so that has stayed with me my whole life, that he did that. And John 15:13 says, "Greater love hath no man than he laid down his life for his brother." And so I always felt that Tom was a very good example of true love, kindness, and caring. And he did that for us, exhibited that, and like Patty said, never missed a birthday to tell us that we were loved and valued. So that's my memory.
This is one of my favorite quotes. It's Maya Angelou, and so it says, I'm trying not to cry. Sorry. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And Uncle Tom was one of those people that wherever you went, you always felt comfortable. He was really easy to talk to, very kind, very caring. And so for Thanksgiving for years, we would always go to my Uncle Jim and Aunt Sally's house for Thanksgiving. And he would get there earlier. He would drive across the country, like y'all are talking about driving. He'd drive across the country, stop in New Mexico or on the way back, and see Tommy Jr. and see different people. But he would always come early and golf. And so people who know the Snooks know that they're really good golfers. So I was always intimidated because golf is not my sport. I like sports, but golf is not my sport.
I golfed with John.
He's not that good. Okay. So they would do this. I would call it like a family golf scramble on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, Thursday. So I remember the year that I was like, hey, this is the first year I really want to participate and try it. And so I had taken a few lessons like in the summer, and then didn't golf the rest of the time, till November. So I was kind of nervous, and so I was on Uncle Tom and Uncle John's team, and I remember just feeling like really anxious and nervous about it. And he just always made me feel very, comfortable, and he's really encouraging. And so it was actually the best game of golf that I've ever had. Not that I golf a lot, but I almost got a hole-in-one that day. Like I was like, I don't know, 6 feet from a hole-in-one. So another memory I have also with Thanksgiving is that
Did you make the putt?
I did. I got it in two.
All right.
It was a par 3, so in two. But then for Thanksgiving morning, Uncle Tom and I always made breakfast, like a breakfast casserole, and it was his recipe, but it was our tradition. And he obviously could have made it without me. He's a really good cook, but he always made me feel like I was a part of it, that I was needed, and that I was an important piece of dicing or whatever I was doing, putting on the deal. That was the most important part of his casserole. But anyway,
Fingers out of it.
yeah, so I don't cook myself. He taught me how to cook too. But he's just one of those people who always is just so kind, and his energy and how much he loves people is always very comfortable to be around. Just made people feel very comfortable and included, and so yeah.
He loved those Thanksgivings too. He really looked forward to them.
Very fun.
And one of the last day or second from the last day, we'd play golf before he went. But he loved looking forward to those Thanksgiving, boy. He enjoyed them. Then he drove. Take Phoenix by 5 hours. Okay, Tom.
Well, I remember when Tom and I lived in Minneapolis before I started school. I was probably 5 years old. I just learned to ride a bicycle. And we used to ride all over the neighborhood. And we had kind of a gang. There was about 4 or 5 of us. And we used to go into service stations, and we'd get the attendant to come out to help us check the air in our tires. Well, one of us would go in the station, the distraction ploy, and steal penny candy.
Truth comes out.
Yeah, but we'd never show up for dinner, and consequently, Mom and Dad started looking for a place for us to live away from Minneapolis, and we moved to Victoria. And that's where I started first grade. And then that was a great property to live on. And then Carver Park was in the works, and our farm that we paid $9,000 for, Dad was able to get $27,000 for it 3 years later, and we moved to Delano. Then we, ice skating and playing on the lake, and swam 3 times a day in the summer because we only had 1 bathroom, no shower. But then Tom went into service, and I pretty much lost contact with him until right around 2000. My first trip out to his house in California was 2004, and he kind of got me back into golf after being away from it because of motorcycling, because I wasn't able to do both, because I can't, golf on
Well,
weekends.
not at the same time.
Not at the same time. And he instilled a love of reading books that I still have, and still loving golf also. And the driving to Texas for Thanksgiving, I would go out to California a week before we'd leave on the trip, play 4 or 5 rounds in the week before we left, and then we'd play a couple rounds on the way to San Antonio, play 3 to 4 rounds in a weekend in San Antonio, and then go up to Jim and Sally's. One year we played 10 days in a row. But that was only whether Tom Spack would hold up for that. He had the desire.
Yeah.
But those are some of my memories.
And when you came out, you had the privilege of meeting me.
And Karen.
Karen.